Police wouldn't say if they suspect the two vehicles were racing, but say they do have access to some dash cam video and there are witnesses who are cooperating. The BC government has dropped plans for a controversial anti-American softwood lumber advertising campaign after a meeting with top federal cabinet ministers today. For more, let's check in with Rob Shaw at the BC legislature. Now, Rob, Premier David Eby had been taking a pretty tough stance here, been insisting he was going to run these ads. So what changed today?
Well, Stacey, it looks like the Premier was playing a bit of a game of chicken here with the federal government, using the threat of these ads to demand an emergency softwood lumber summit on the sector. Today, he did get that, and he expressed what his frustrations are, that BC forestry doesn't get as much attention on tariffs as Ontario aluminum, steel, and the auto sector. And then Eby said he felt heard, though all he really got was an agreement for a working group with federal and provincial deputy ministers, which is the political equivalent of basically nothing. But BC has backed down. It also comes as the fallout of Ontario's U.S. advertising campaign continues. The Prime Minister admitting on the weekend he apologized to U.S. President Donald Trump for the ads after Trump suspended trade talks. That path of adding a new BC ad is just way too politically heated right now for the BC government to play that game of brinksmanship. Here's the Premier and the federal minister today.
Minister LeBlanc didn't have to ask. I knew that it was a source of anxiety for many people, including potentially the federal government, given the reaction to the Ontario tariffs. One of my commitments to the federal government was that if they came to the table with us, if they sat with us, that we would work with them on communications, on strategy, on how to support the sector and how to move forward.
We do raise the importance of coming to a negotiated agreement with the United States on softwood lumber. When we talk to them, as you know, those conversations have been suspended. When we get back to the negotiating table, obviously we'll continue to push for a negotiated settlement.
In terms of actual forestry policy changes today, pretty much nothing for an industry desperate for help. The forest sector was not invited to the meeting. It renewed calls for the BC government to accelerate permitting reform, reduce forest tenure costs, match any federal aid, and speed up access to timber. All policy changes the province could make now if it wanted. Here's that reaction.
Well, we're pleased to see that they've agreed to have a federal provincial table. Again, we think industry needs to be at the table in order to be part of that conversation. You know, this is really about fighting for jobs in communities across British Columbia, family supporting jobs in communities across British Columbia. The forest industry is so important to all of our cities, towns, and First Nations communities. And so we really do need to all be working together to make sure we can keep people working.
So forestry summit that ended up being a lot of political theater today, despite the government is billing it as a kind of turning point for the forest sector. Not much here other than 4 cabinet ministers arriving for a photo op and the Premier agreeing to drop those ads, Stacey, as the forest sector continues to reel from tariffs, but with no immediate aid.